Listen, in all seriousness, I did really find that note, but two offensive coordinators this week have found homes, or there are two offensive coordinator positions that were just filled. The one that I wanted to talk about first was Kellen Moore in Philly. And listen, Philly at the very least, and I have to be careful about this stuff because I don't want to sound like somebody who's endorsing a coach. Like I don't know how these things are going to work out. I was at the airport today, and some guy, I was on the tarmac, and the guy was like, "Hey, I saw you endorse Vic Fangio, like I'm Taylor Swift." I'm not Taylor Swift. I'm just on my pod educating people on what you might come to expect if Vic Fangio is going to be the coach schematically, where he's been, some of the highlights of his career. I don't know if it's going to work out. I feel good about it. I feel good about the fact that they hired him over some other guys. I feel good about the fact that he's a former head coach, and I think this is something that gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. Nick Sirianni, young guy, head coach, right? He's been to the Super Bowl, but it's good to have an older guy in the building. It's good to have a guy in the building that's going to be unafraid of telling Nick Sirianni what he doesn't want to hear sometimes. And I think also Nick Sirianni strikes me as the guy who, if somebody's experience is disarming enough to where he can weigh in, he can change your mind from time to time. That's a positive, and I think that's advice and the level of wisdom that a Nick Sirianni would not only benefit from having in the building, but also would embrace having in the building. Not to mention the thing we've talked about all year, which is that Vic Fangio was there last year. So you have to know that they have some sort of a positive working relationship, and that maybe there's an untold amount of Vic Fangio influence last year in how things were done. I don't think people understand this. Like, being a head coach is an exhaustive challenge. We're going to talk about it with Hannah in a little bit, like all the things that a coach has to worry about in today's modern NFL. And Vic Fangio has been a head coach, and he's been around the game for a long time. So having that in the building, you've at least got that. I don't think it's a lateral move. I don't think it's a backwards move. I think it's a move in the right direction. Obviously, personnel is going to dictate as much as anything how that defense plays. Offensively, I think it's nice to know that you've got a guy in Kellen Moore who a year ago was as hot a name as anybody. I know it's not going to be consolation for some Eagles fans who might have wanted somebody else, or maybe you looked at the Chargers play offense this year, but I don't really want to judge him off the Chargers year. I don't. Like, I think this team has more in common with the Cowboys teams that he coached. And I also think that with some of the injuries and complications in LA this year, that the grade I would give him would be incomplete. Like, I'm going to gauge what I'm going to see in the future, or trying to predict that off of what happened in Dallas. And, if you look at who Kellen Moore is, in the same vein of me laying out schematically who I think Vic Fangio is, I think he's a West Coast guy that puts a twist on it. When you think West Coast offense, you think of Dinkin and Duncan, you think of the short game, you think of quick release, a run game that marries with the pass concepts, and you see that so often with some of these West Coast tree guys. But don't get it twisted. This guy is not a dink and dunk guy. He's going to take shots vertically. He prefers having that element in his game plans, and I think that's a good thing. And it's not going to be music to people's ear in Philly who were screaming all year about short game. I think he's going to have those elements in his offense. He's going to have hots. He's going to have easy answers for quarterback. But I also think having that vertical element will make them look more like 2022. I think if things work out, you can have those vertical elements and also go back to some of the elements that Shane Steichen had. Some of the more Jalen Hurts friendly crossing kind of patterns, and the underneath stuff that can complement the deep stuff. And I think this could work out really well. I'll lay out two scenarios for you. One where it works out, one where it doesn't. I think one positive is you want to look more like the team that ran the ball. He's going to do that. That's his bread and butter. I mean, he loves 12 personnel. He loves to pound the rock. They love to have a ground control element to that offense where Kellen Moore was in Dallas. Like, that was a big part of it. I think you'll see a better run game with Kellen Moore. at the very least. The passing concepts, the fit with Jalen, that remains to be seen. If it works out, I think it'll look more like 2022 with some of the explosive elements. I think the run game will be more of of a factor, as it should be. I think that he has better wide receivers in this offense than he did in Dallas. In Dallas, they had some firepower, but when you've got an AJ Brown and DeVonta Smith and Dallas Goedert, like, I'm looking at that set of weapons, and I'm saying this might be my best menu to choose from yet as a play caller. So that's all positive. The negatives, or the scenario where it might not work out is, and it might have nothing to do with the coordinator, is like the offensive line, which has been such a consistent and predictable strength of this team. That could change a little bit next year. I don't think it's going to be a weakness, but with Jason Kelce possibly retiring, how much does that affect the scheme? I mean, how many centers, 23 years old, 33 years old, whatever, get out and run in space like Jason Kelce does? The guy runs like he's 21 years old. And, one of the lasting images of Kelce that I'm going to have in my head is him in the open field. If you think of Jason Kelce before the tush push, what did you think of? You thought of this guy running 4.9 down the field to get the linebacker or the safety, or a guy that you can pull and get out on the edge from the center position. Like, that's not something that most teams have, and at least not to the degree that Jason Kelce has it. And so, like, if he's not there, how does that change some elements of the run game? They're going to be under center more. Like I said, throw out the Chargers year. They were 8th in shotgun snaps the Chargers year. Even if they're 8th, that's a big deviation from the way they've been. Like they are barely under center in an offense with Jalen Hurts to this point. And so, like, if you look at Dallas, when he was in Dallas, they were in gun 25th in the league. Like they ran the 25th highest clip of gun plays. Okay. With the Chargers, I said it was 8th. The Eagles are 1st. And so how does Jalen Hurts respond if he has to go under center a little bit more? Or does he say, hey, listen, we're going to hover around 5th. We need you under center a little bit more, but we're not going to look like we looked in Dallas. And that could just be a player preference thing. That could be something he meets Jalen in the middle on, if it is a Jalen thing. Motion, I do think, is something that he cannot afford to meet Jalen in the middle on. I think they need a lot more pre-snap motion in this offense, and I think you'll get it with him. Like, when he was in Dallas, they were 13th in motion, in pre-snap motion. When he was in LA, they were 7th in pre-snap motion. Philly is 30th in pre-snap motion. That's something we talked about this year at length. So I think if you're looking in the column of maybe it doesn't work out, it's not because his scheme doesn't have value. I think you look at a couple of these variables and you say, I just don't know. I just don't know how that would work out. Like, if Jalen struggles under center, is that going to be an impediment to him? If Jalen wants a static picture and doesn't want motion pre-snap, is that going to be an impediment to him? But I'm pretty sure all this has been discussed. So it'll be interesting to see how much of that is Jalen's unwillingness or inability to do those things, and how much of it is just they haven't committed to it and truly gone through the process of grooming him to be a little bit different. And so I'm interested to see how those things manifest. Endorsement, I don't know. But I do think it's a move in the right direction. And as I mentioned, you have a defensive coordinator who's been a head coach. That's invaluable. His scheme, highly thought of. And yeah, over the last couple of years, people have caught up a little bit to some of his disciples. But this is the guy that he was the trailblazer. So let's see how this works out. I'm really excited about these two moves. They could be a lot worse. Okay. I didn't say endorsement, but I am excited.